So in the hardware package, you get this sort of rubber wrap. It's supposed to reduce cable rattle in the frame. I think I mentioned it at the beginning. I never had issues with my R12, but maybe people are having this problem. I don't know. It could go on the rear brake cable. It's hard to route on. So probably easiest to put it on the back cable. You can just push it back and forth to make sure you get the right one. Reason why it's easier, it's a little bit thinner of a cable, so it should slide on. You could, yeah. We'll just feed it on. So definitely make sure it doesn't come out at the end, and it's tricky towards the end. You have the friction through it. Just making sure once you get the outside, then you can push it down easy enough. That'll reset the keel where I want it. All right, perfect. So from here, we're going to want to put the fork in, get the headset set up. We have our 3 cables plus a 4th cable that's attached to the fork. So for this, you'll need all the headset pieces and your stem. Perfect. Also need grease at this point, so you might want gloves or a rag. So as mentioned, I already put the steer on the fork. So again, in your nice plastic hardware thing, you should get a black piece already snapped on. That's fine. You need 2 headset bearings. Measurements are mostly the same. You can see the top one's a little bit thicker than the bottom, so that's how they'll go in the frame. No matter whether you're using the integrated or normal stem from the headset parts, you'll need this silver thing and this top one. I find you can't necessarily just change top caps easily based on the spacing of the bearings. You may or may not get rubbing on top cap and the frame if you just grab any random one. You could play with spacers to fix that, but we'll use this. And to sort of combat the issue of not using the Yoeleo bars, again, there's 2 little tabs. The purpose of the tabs is so that all the holes stay aligned, all the cables come out, and there's no issues. So what I've done is I've taken a carbon spacer and cut holes so that it fits nicely on. So I just marked it where the posts were, and then just took a saw back and forth, nice and easy. The other thing we'll need is the expander plug. So we'll install that first. Take out the top cap. Need an Allen key to get this started. This one's even bigger. I find it's good to start it in your hand because it starts a little loose. And then when you're trying to tighten it up in the steer tube, it just spins. So you get nowhere. You can stand there for 10 minutes. So have it just tight enough that it just fits into the steer tube. Again, this is a bigger Allen key, and then tighten it up. So the goal of the expander plug is so when the stem is clamping down, it's not clamping into a void. There's this expander plug pushing back, so you don't have it collapsing. All about safety. All right, nice and tight. If you don't have it tight enough, when you tighten the top cap, it'll pull it out. So again, you don't want to tighten it too much that it's going to break it, but definitely tight enough there's enough friction. So what we'll do is we want to sort of weather seal this, so a little bit of grease helps. Grease and not oil. Don't want to use your chain lube. That will just come off. You want thick grease here. Put a little bit on the top of the fork and a little bit inside the frame. Cane grease is just water repellent. Keeps the water out. Also put some on the top. We have it out. So this is always the most daunting part of an internally routed bike, because once you've set all the cables up, there's no going back. Unless you want to redo everything. So again, important time to make sure you've got the right bearings. Smaller one, put to the bottom. First put it through the cable. And then press down. Make sure it spins well. And we're good. So last cable to put through the headset. The top tube, or head tube, sorry. Oops. They've been wound up for a while, so they want to stay wound. Okay. So this is where it might be a good idea to also sort of figure out the routing of the cables so it stays clean. So you want the front two cables, they're going to be routed to the left to maybe be on the left already. The brake cables, we already know. So back one, and then just figuring out the front. The other reason why you want to figure this out now is because you want them balanced around the steer tube. If you have all the cables routing around one side of the steer tube, it's going to pull. So if you're going to take your hands off the bars, you want to celebrate a sprint or take your jacket off, that's going to give you issues. It's going to pull one way. So this is mainly because they come around and out the front. So make sure you split them up. So we do that first because we have more room to move around. Then the bearing goes on. We've already applied the grease to the frame. This can be a pain. And you want the angled side of the bearings, so it's flat on one side, angled. Angle goes into the frame. Oops. Just reconfirm cabling. Front, this is back. And this one is push. Perfect. So now everything bring to the front. Next up, silver piece goes in. This forces the cables to fit in just one small spot. Also aligns the steer tube. In. This can be hard to align. What really helps put it in place is getting in this, because then it forces for sure the cables through one spot. Again, just try to use my knee to hold it in place. Alright. You can see how much easier that went together once this held the cables in place. Then I've got my carbon spacer that I've cut a hole into. Perfect. I will then lightly attach my heads or my stem. And then this stem has a very low stack height. I always think about resellability. got weird dimensions, so I'm actually going to put a quite big spacer on the top, which will allow the next person, if I ever sell this, to run a normal stem and not need a new fork. So with that, I'll tighten up this top cap, and then everything should be good. So when you're tightening the top cap, you'll want to make sure everything's aligned, the spacers in the slots, and it'll help if you have your cables going where they need to be. So we want it loosely there. Again, we can always loosen it and retighten, but it's best to get it started close. That way we get the cable lengths right. All right. And then you just want to test that you can turn things. Perfect. If you find you have a lot of play, you might need another spacer. The top cap's bottoming out on the steer tube. Or if you can't turn it at all, you could have the bearings in the wrong order, with a thicker one at the bottom, thinner one at the top. And then you just have this top cap rubbing on the frame. So you can, at this point, I would switch the bearings. If you've already cabled everything through, realize at the end, you could just add a spacer at the bottom. That leaves a little bit of a gap. You could fill it with grease. This should still work. All right. And then I'll just quickly tighten the stem up so it stays in place for the final riveting.